Hey, you're listening to the Birth Junkie podcast. Get ready to dive into all things birth with me. We talk about all the hot topics from preconception to postpartum. I'm so excited for you to join me on this journey to realizing that we're all human. We all make mistakes, and it's going to be messy at times. And we're all just kind of figuring it all out as we go. Now, if you're ready to hear raw, unfiltered, and real-life stories of struggles, triumphs, and learn a thing or two from parents and birth professionals alike, then come along as we navigate this thing called parenthood together. This week, I have a special guest, and her name is Lisa Marie, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about hospital birth and expectations for your doula that you're hiring. All right, Lisa, so I'm just going to go ahead and let you take it away.
Hello, everybody out there in podcast land. My name is Lisa Marie Flores, and I am in Fresno, California, Central Valley. So a lot of people don't know where Fresno is, and they always ask me because they always think of California. Oh, you're by Hollywood, LA. But I'm between LA and San Francisco. So I'm like right smack dab in the middle of California, where all the agriculture is. So Fresno is known for, we actually have our own chili, like the Fresno chili.
Yeah, love it. And then
And
what is it you do for work?
so I am a holistic birth postpartum doula. I like to say birth worker, but a lot of people don't understand birth worker, so I have to say doula. And I am also a Grubhub Uber delivery driver.
Yeah,
Wow.
as a lot of us are.
Yeah, it's have to bring in the income. And I prefer to be my own boss, so that's why I do that.
Yep. And in birth work, a lot of times you are your own boss.
Oh yeah, you have to be. So yeah, I'm a birth and postpartum doula. I also do placenta encapsulations, which I honor the client's placenta however they wish to have that honored. A lot of people like encapsulations. A lot of people choose to bury their placenta, which in the indigenous culture, because I'm very indigenous, they do that. Some people prefer to have their placenta cooked and made into a luxurious meal, which I can do that too. Some people don't want to do capsules, so I also do chocolates. I'm a big chocolate lover. I've taken a chocolate course, so I am very familiar with how to make chocolates from the cacao pod down to the chocolate itself.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Yeah.
And so what brought you into birth work?
What brought me into birth work? Honestly, I have a lot of fertility reproductive issues. And so birth work for me kind of started years ago with my own reproductive journey. But it's only been recently that I've come about and thought, okay, what do I want to do with that? And it came to me after sitting with indigenous medicine. I sit with my shaman quite often. I go down to Riverside and sit with Cambo and Wachuma and other plant medicines. And it came to me sometime last year in January, February-ish. And it really was heavy on me. And I thought, okay, it had to do with women and children and babies. And I have a yoni steam person that I go to. And she's like, you should be a doula. And I was like, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to be doing.
I love it. So what brought you to yoni steam? I know maybe not everybody knows what that is.
Yoni steam is awesome. I steam at home. I have my own chair and whatnot. But yoni steaming, like I said, I have reproductive issues myself. And so yoni steaming is very good for cleansing the uterus and cleansing reproductive issues. Or you just, cleaning yourself out, because we've done this for generations. Women, they would gather together and steam the yonis together. And so I've done that many times and I enjoy it. It's very beneficial.
That's great. And then, so how was your experience when you first started supporting births?
Um, well, the birth work in itself is, for me, you need to do a lot of self healing because there are things that are going to come up for you in birth work that are going to be triggers. And for me, I believe that you should do healing within before you can help others. I mean, yeah, you can help others without, but you need to do a lot of deep healing work because when those triggers come up, and if you're not familiar with healing yourself and your body, mind, and spirit, you're going to have all these emotions and not understand why. And for me, like I said, I'm very spiritual. I sit with medicines, and it's very healing to clear things that are from childhood, and not only like childhood, but like past lives that we've brought into this lives that are currently in our body that we have passed on from generations from our ancestors. And so it's very important that we work on ourselves. So when we're working with these women, we can help these women without having our ego in the way.
Exactly. And I think that's a great point that you bring up because I think a lot of times birth workers go into birth work and they think from what they see, it's going to be like this beautiful thing. Their client is going to want to kind of have the doula do everything. And it's not like that. We got to follow the woman's lead. And we have to take our own triggers out of the situation because it's not about us. And I think that's
No,
important that you touched on that.
it's definitely not about us. It's definitely about them and their journey in birth. Because birth in the indigenous culture is a very sacred ceremony. It's a ceremony. And so everybody who's involved in that, in the birthing space, has an impact on that woman and the baby coming through. Because women are vessels and the vagina is a portal. So that portal is opening up and that baby is coming through, passing through the spiritual realm to the physical realm. And it's a very sacred thing. And when you get other people involved in their energies, that all had how it plays a part in it. And the woman absorbs that.
Exactly. I know I personally have been in a birth space, and I'm not saying that birth can't be beautiful. It is beautiful, but there's messy things that can happen. There's interventions that can happen. And
Yes.
from what I've experienced, the energy in the room is so important because if you have like this anxious anxiety, you're putting that onto the woman. You're putting
Oh,
that onto the
yes.
person giving birth.
Yes, definitely. And, in my practice, I like to cleanse the space. Well, not in a hospital, but in their home. I ask if it's okay to come to their home to cleanse their home with sage or Palo Santo or whatever, because the baby is going to come back into that home and it needs to be in a safe environment so that they can thrive. And your home is a very sacred place too. So there's energies there, and you don't want a newborn baby to come back into that environment.
Exactly. I think that's beautiful that you do that. I didn't know that you offered that. I love it.
Thank you. Yes.
And so, if we can go back to like your personal experience with your supporting birth in the hospital, like what is
Sure.
that? How is that for you?
So my recent birth I had in the hospital, and I have a big heart for teenagers, for teenage girls, and especially teenage girls in the foster system. That's one of the things I specialize in, is working with teenagers in the foster system, because it's hard enough to be in the foster system, but to be a pregnant teenager in the foster system, it's very stressful, and sometimes they don't have anybody to turn to or understand what's going on, or they're very young, so they don't understand what they're getting themselves into and going to a hospital and having a baby, and they don't understand the interventions because as a society we're very brainwashed, and whatever's on TV and movies, that's how it's supposed to be. And that's not how it is at all. Not at all. So On my most recent birth, I had a teenage girl and teenage parents, and she had a very traumatic birth. She was, from my eyes, didn't deal with pain very well. And I kept telling her like to breathe through that pain. But when you are in pain, and if you don't learn how to breathe properly, you're going to hold that in your body and all of that pain. And that's just going to slow everything down and make it more painful. So, and I'm very familiar with pain because I have endometriosis and I've dealt with reproductive pain for years. I'm 39 now, and I've dealt with it since I was about 14, 15.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very familiar with all of that pain. It's been compared to childbirth. And so I come from a place of love when I'm in that space, and I understand what the woman is feeling. So my client, she was dealing with a lot of pain and really not wanting to move much. And I kept trying to encourage her, let's try other positions, let's move. But she just, wasn't wanting to. She had an epidural. The epidural wore off. So she felt everything. And it was a long labor for her. She went into labor a couple of days before that. And I give her props because she got herself to 6 centimeters before she went to the hospital, which is a lot of women don't even do that on their own. So I encourage her, wait as long as you can before you go to the hospital. Whenever her water broke the night before, and then she went, and they had told her she has 6 centimeters. And when I arrived to the hospital, I think I was only there for like an hour, and then they let her know she was at 9 centimeters. So I was like, that's great. You're almost there, 1 more centimeter, and hopefully the baby comes out soon.
Right.
But it didn't go that way, obviously. It was several hours later before she had the baby. The staff was really nice, but I had to intervene a few times because she wanted to use a birthing bar, because she eventually wanted to get up and try to push on her own, which is okay if she wants to push on her own, but they kept telling her, don't push yet. And they kept telling her, well, if you don't get this baby out, we're going to have to give you Pitocin. And she was like, I don't want Pitocin. That's going to be so much worse. And she started to freak out more. And so, it came down to that time. And the doctor came in and everything. And I'm a type of person, I'm not going to hold back too much. That's what I'm there for. I'm there to empower you and encourage you to use your voice to speak up for yourself, because they're going to listen to the client versus the doula, because the doula is just there for support. They're not the client and contracted with them. So
right.
I try to tell the clients, speak up for yourself. Or if they aren't, then the partner, will go encourage the partner. Hey, you need to tell the staff what you want, or tell them that you don't want this. So when it came down to the birth, I really had to bite my tongue because of what I saw in the birthing space. The doctor, she was having a hard time pushing, and she was concerned about tearing, and they couldn't get the baby out. So the next thing I heard was the doctor say, go get the baby shampoo. And I was like, baby shampoo. And so I said to my client, is that something you want? And I said, what is that for? The doctor said, oh, it's just to help the baby come out, which I have never heard of. And later on, I found out that's a big no-no. And that's third world country stuff. And if you ever see that, say something, because that shouldn't, that could cause infection in the vagina. That's chemicals being put, and it can cause a UTI and other things. They did that and everything. And eventually, she got the head out. I believe that she did tear, but they didn't tell her that she tore until later on, because she was asking. And They flat out lied
Oh,
and said
interesting.
she didn't tear. And they tell her, oh, no, you didn't tear.
Hmm.
And so when, she's pushing and pushing and she's screaming because she's in so much pain, I heard the nurse say, stop screaming
Oh, geez.
and focus all your attention on your pushing. And I turned to her and I said, use your voice, vocalize however you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of very disappointed in the nurse at that point, because I imagine she's had children herself. Well, you can't help the noises that are going to come out of you.
Exactly.
And telling a young girl to stop screaming, that was just not okay to me. And so she kept pushing and pushing, and she started to scream, but then I noticed that she stopped herself. And that made me really sad, because she was shut down in that moment. And so baby came out. The couple had, already agreed that they wanted to do placenta encapsulation with me. So, and they also wanted to do cord clamping. Well, before that had even happened, the nurse had told us that they do cord clamping. They honor that. The doctor honors that, but only 30 to 60 seconds.
Oh, the delayed cord clamping.
Yeah. And I bit my tongue. And when the doctor had walked out, I talked to the boyfriend, the partner, and I said, is that something you want? Because I know what you guys wanted. And if this is something you want, like, you have the right to do longer than that. And so he said, yeah, he was going to say something. When it came down to it, baby came out, and I heard, okay, immediately, honestly, it wasn't even that long. She's like, okay, it's been 120 seconds. Can we cord clamp? And, the mother's exhausted. Everything's happening so quickly. They're just like, yes. And I was just like, really? It was very disappointing to me. So they didn't honor what they wanted at all. And they took advantage of that. And that's unfortunate. When there's couples that are young, the hospital staff is just going to do things out of routine and try to take advantage of the situation. And that's where a doula comes in.
Right.
But, I didn't say anything. Everything was happening so fast. And I guess because she had a difficult birth and the baby was in there longer, they called in the NICU staff before that, and they said the baby had a fever when the baby was born, and he had tachycardia, which is just rapid heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking, okay, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Just because, like, you should explain that to the mother.
Exactly. Yeah, I
The
know,
mother
it's
is
crazy.
not going to understand what that means, especially when you say tachycardia. A lot of people don't understand what is that. Like, I understand what it is because I understand medical terminology.
Right.
But eventually, I was said, just put the baby on the mother, because it'll regulate the body temperature and the heart rate. Eventually they did.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just upsetting to just witness that happening and not even caring about what the mother was feeling.
Yeah.
And so, and it came down to it, we told them, we're saving the placenta so I can take it with me or whatever. But I literally watched the doctor cut the cord very strangely. Even the staff was like, that's weird. I've never seen it like that. But I literally watched the staff suck all the blood out of the cord with needles and syringes to save for whatever they're going to do with it. And I mean,
Stem cells.
I know what they do with it. Like, I
Right.
know, I'm familiar, and I educate my clients. This is what really happens, because I don't like to beat around the bush. I'm going to be honest. And so I tell clients what they really do with the placentas and the cords if you don't take it with you.
Yeah.
And
do you want to kind of touch on what they do, or what we know that they do?
Yeah. Ladies, your placenta is sold for about $45,000. And, stem cells, yes, they are very beneficial in healing, whatever. But That's an organ that you grew. That's your organ. That's your baby's. And you have every right to keep it. And it shouldn't be taken away from you. In indigenous cultures, like I said, it's its own spirit. And that's something that's very sacred and it should be honored.
Definitely.
And so you need to take that with you. And yeah, they take those and they sell them for money. And so I'm watching this happen and literally right before my eyes, and I see all the staff. And so I said to my client, is this something that you want? And somehow it was thrown into, oh, well, it's just for testing, but not really. Because I think that the client's mother had said, oh, they just do testing, right? And the girl was like, well, not exactly.
Oh, wow.
But yeah. So whatever. But I'm sitting there watching this. I'm like infuriated because I know what's really happening, but I can't really do anything about it because it's not mine. And the client, whatever, that's whatever she wanted. And so, but then I watched the doctor turn around and start sucking the blood out of placenta.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was just very disappointing and infuriating.
Yeah. And then, so before she went into labor, I don't know, was there anything that you feel like maybe you could have done differently to educate her? Or do you feel like you gave her all the tools and she kind of ran with it the way she kind of wanted?
Well, every client is different. Some are very all about their birth and they want to know everything that's going on. They're very happy and excited, but a lot of young girls are not completely educated on birth. They're not going to completely understand everything that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why self-healing is a very important thing, to work on yourself and understand things about yourself. But, she did a lot of research herself about things that she didn't want done, like the vitamin K, erythromycin. Like, she was very educated, and I was very proud of her for doing that for herself and knowing what those were and the benefits and pros and cons, whatever.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's
so
amazing.
she did that herself. And, I would just give her like tools and different things that she was dealing with about being in pain. Or towards the end, I would try to encourage her, try to walk, do some walking, do some exercises if you can, because you want to move that baby down into the birth canal. Because if you're not moving enough and you're restricting yourself, the baby, and I knew at that point that she was going to have a difficult birth because she was complaining about being in pain and it was hard for her to move around a lot. And so she couldn't really do much walking or exercises or whatever. So I knew it's going to be a difficult birth for her. But yeah. I did my best to give her whatever support that she needed. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage her to, get information from the doctor that she needed for prenatal appointments.
Yeah.
And if she wasn't happy with her OB, then she had every right to switch to another provider, because yes, you do. You do not have to stick with your provider if you're unhappy.
Yeah.
But, like I said, a lot of young girls are just like, whatever, I don't care. I'm just done. I want to get the baby out of me. They're not going to think or try to advocate for themselves about, hey, I really want another doctor.
Yeah. And man, I wish I would have had you when I had my first baby, because I had her a month before I turned 17. So I was technically still 16. And I just felt the pressure of the world going into that hospital. And there was like, timer on me because my water had already broken. And they told me to stay in the bed because they had to monitor the baby. And, it ultimately led to a C-section that was unnecessary. But gosh, I didn't even think to educate myself in that moment, because I was like, well, everybody has babies all the time. So my body will just know how to do it. But now, I feel differently about that because of my experiences. So, yeah, I would suggest anybody who's pregnant or thinking about having a baby, like just educate yourself. Just look into some things because especially if you're having a hospital birth. I mean, either way,
Yes,
home birth, birth center, or hospital birth, like do your research because there's so many things that you wouldn't even think of that happen in the hospital.
exactly. And it's not, like I said, it's not what we see in movies and TV at all. That's there to pretty much brainwash us so that the medical industry, Western medicine, can pretty much take advantage of us as women. And, there's so much today technology, the internet, you have it all right in front of you. You have the ability to do your research, YouTube videos, because women have babies every day and they're making videos about their births and everything. There's birth education courses. Take an education course about childbirth.
Yeah.
Particularly not one from a hospital, because that's going to be catered to hospital birth.
Yeah.
Do one outside of the hospital.
Yeah.
And there's so many out there, and there's so many great ones. And doulas have their own education courses as well. I don't have one yet, but in the near future, I am going to create one.
Oh, I think that would be so amazing. Oh, I can't wait for that.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's important to focus on the fact that you should really look at birth education outside of the system because, I don't want to bash hospitals because there's a place for hospitals, there's a place for Western medicine, but typically for like a healthy woman who's having a normal pregnancy, it's really not necessary to get all these interventions like Pitocin, like an
Yeah.
epidural. I mean, there's so many things. And if you know like the ingredients in all of these things and you're still okay with them, have at it, but do your research so you know what's going into your body, because unfortunately a hospital is a business.
It is. They are. And a lot of women don't realize that. And a hospital is a place where sick people go.
Yeah.
A hospital is really not a place to have a baby. And I listened to this podcast of this doctor, Dr. Stu.
Oh yeah.
He's
Love
really
him.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, he calls people clients, not patients, because patients are people who are sick. And that's
Yeah.
the truth. Childbirth has been happening for generations, forever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you think we got here? And so, how do you think women did it before? There was no hospitals then.
Exactly. And for anyone who's not familiar with Dr. Stu, his podcast is Birthing Instincts, and he is actually an OBGYN who worked in the hospital for many years. And he actually transitioned over to being a home birth OBGYN. So he only dealt with home births and, a lot of times special cases, such as one lady had VBAC after 3 C-sections with a breech baby, and he helped her, in that situation at home. So, it is possible. But anyways, he's amazing.
Yes, he is. So I encourage anybody who's pregnant, listen to his podcast, because there's a lot of good education, because it's coming from a doctor, and he
Mm-hmm.
will flat out tell you the truth. And a lot
Yeah.
of doctors aren't like him. He's very unique and very special.
Yes, he is. Yeah. So going back to kind of like your experience, so do you still support hospital births or was that
I
kind
mean,
of
I will,
yeah.
I do. I mean, whatever the client wants, I'm there to support her
Mm-hmm.
and their partner or whatever. If they choose to have baby in hospital, that's fine. That's on them. I mean, I'm not the one paying their bill. I'm not going to tell them, oh no, don't do that. But I will educate them on the pros and cons of being in a hospital versus a birthing center or at home. which unfortunately in Fresno, we don't have a birthing center yet.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, we don't have that. It would be really nice. And we only have 2 midwives here. And so I don't know too many people that go outside the hospital to have a baby. My
Yeah.
one recent client had a home birth. And so the midwife came to her. And so I asked her because she has a daughter and she just had a son. I said, so how was it being at home versus the hospital? And she said, a big difference.
I bet.
A big difference. And she was so much happier.
Good. Oh, I love that. And so how do you feel like what expectations do you think are reasonable for a couple to have when they're hiring like a doula? Because I feel like sometimes people confuse doulas with midwives and they think that
Yeah.
doulas are medicalized, which obviously we're not. But so anyways, I just want to get your take on what kind of expectations they should have.
Well, if I were the person being pregnant and I hired a doula, not knowing anything about doulas, like I said, do your research, educate yourself on what a doula is, and then you interview the doula. I mean, the doula is going to interview you too, because everything has to be aligned. You should only work together if you're in alignment with each other, really,
Mhm.
because, like I said, that's a very sacred ceremony. And so, you have the right to ask the doula whatever questions you want, what they are going to do to help you, what they can do to help you, and what they do and don't do. So for me as a doula, like I said, I'm there to empower you as a woman to step into your power and to know what childbirth is and how you can advocate for yourself. And doula training with certain organizations, they'll tell you, well, you can't speak for the client.
Mhm.
But in certain situations, I'm going to step back and let you try to do it for yourself. But if I notice, yeah, you're not doing it for yourself, I will speak up. I will say something and I will question what's happening.
Yeah. And I think it's important to have like those kind of like rules, I guess, set in place while the person is still pregnant. Like, talk to them and say, hey, if this situation happens, do you want me to speak for you? Or do you want me to talk to your partner and have them speak for you? How should we do this? Because once you're in the throes of labor, a lot of
Yeah.
times you're like, I don't even care. I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. So,
Yeah. And that's what I do with my clients. I tell them, if this and this happens, you're going to speak up. And if you feel like you can't speak up, then I will say something. And I try to come up with a code word, say, bananas. Bananas pretty much lets me know, like, okay, I need to step in and say something. And, a lot of women, have their partners, but sometimes women don't have partners in the picture. So that's another place for a doula, because who's going to be there to support you? And yeah, they could have their mother or their sister or whatever, but sometimes in the birthing space, family members get involved. They've had children, and so they think they know best for you
mhm.
and do it like this because, oh, I've had 2 children, so I know what you're going through. But yeah, you may know what you're going through, but you haven't experienced the same traumas of that person. You haven't been in the shoes and the life and the skin of that person. So everything is going to be completely different. No birth is the same. It doesn't feel the same. I mean, yeah, it's painful, but it doesn't have to be painful, because pain is just the body's way of expressing itself and expressing trauma and letting you know something is happening.
Yeah. And I think a good way to look at it is, I mean, it might feel painful, but it's like a sensation with purpose. It's not because typically we're conditioned to think pain, oh my gosh, I need to get away from this
Yes.
because, it doesn't feel good.
Yes.
Well, this is a purposeful sensation. So I think if we kind of change our mindset of what exactly this sensation is, I think that will help us so much.
Yes. And, I also encourage meditation for clients if they're open to it. And there's so many different meditations online that you can follow, or even just, you have to follow one. Sit still for 5 minutes. And that's really hard for some people to do because your mind is constantly running.
Yeah.
But it's really important to slow our minds down and just go within and be with ourselves and focus on your breath, because the breath is extremely important. Your breath is everything in childbirth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And I think if you're breathing when you're in childbirth, if it's like super fast and you're kind of like hyperventilating, that's going to lead to that tension felt
Yes.
in your body. And yeah, so I think it's super important to just hone in on your breath
Yes.
and focus on that, because that'll also help you focus on something other than these painful sensations.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Focus on the breath. That's what I always tell people. Focus on your breath. Breathe.
Yeah, I love that. So, is there anything that you wanted to touch on or you wanted to give in our parting after this conversation?
Like I said, I'm a doula. I'm very holistic. And so if everybody is different when it comes down to choosing a doula, make sure you choose a doula that's right for you, in alignment for you. Not everybody's holistic.
Mhm.
Our doulas aren't. A lot of people don't even understand what holistic means. And so choose somebody that's right for you. And if you're unhappy with a person or something that's happening or misunderstanding, let them know,
Mhm.
hey, this is, I'm not happy with this. Communicate. Communicate is very important. So
Yeah.
make sure you communicate with everybody around you that's going to be part of your birthing space.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. So if there's like a way to connect with you, the best ways to connect with you, what would those be for people if they want to find you?
Instagram. I have an Instagram page that people can follow me on. It's at phenomenal underscore woman, WOMB as in boy, AN underscore birth worker.
Yeah, and I'll
And
also put that in the show notes so that people can just click the link and get right to you.
that's the best way to reach me. Or I have a website, www.phenomenalwoman.com, which you can also link for them as well. And I have a website and a beautiful logo that a really good friend of mine created.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. It's beautiful. It's like the tree of life.
Yes, like I said, after sitting with medicine, after sitting with Wachuma, that came to me. And I had the vision and I just told her what I wanted and she created it. And she's awesome. She's amazing.
Yeah, so do I. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This was
Thank
a
you.
very great conversation. I can't wait for people to hear it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Bye.
Bye.
I really hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed creating it. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of the discussions on all of these hot topics. Head over to my Instagram at the Birth Junkie Podcast to let me know what you thought about this episode. I can't wait to see you here next week. Until next time, bye.